Here's
he is.
Austin, great. And Austin's joined us. We now have 5 members of the board. So I call the meeting to order. And Austin, introduce you to our new building commissioner, Davis Walters, if you haven't met him.
Hi, Austin.
We only have 2 items on the agenda tonight. The first are the minutes of the meeting of November 15. They've been circulated. Are there any questions or comments or corrections for the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? I'll move.
So
Is there a
moved.
second? All right. Is there a second? Is that Lynn? I don't know. We'll put someone down there for a second. All right. On a new business, as you know, we've had discussions in the past that I've been concerned about the quality of the applications we've been getting. And I think part of it is the disjointed format of the application process. As I looked through it, it seemed to me that there's a lot of places, if you get the application from the town, there's a lot of places where you can get lost and overlook things that were needed. So all I really did was I reformatted the application. I took all the information that the application contained. I broke it into 2, one for variances and one for special permits. And I made basically 11 questions out of them. It's basically all the questions that were asked in the application, but done as 11 bullet points. And then I create a sheet where there are, again, after 11, we get into 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, which just call for external documents to be part of the application. And those are the same external documents that the present application calls for now, with one addition. Some of you may remember in past cases, the applicants have given us a GIS map, a portion of the GIS map, which shows the lot and the structures on the adjoining lots. And it was much more, I thought that was very helpful in each case where we had it in the past. So I've made that a new, so I suggest that as a new requirement for our applications. It really is it's very handy, as opposed to we get the assessor's map, which is that circle of adjoining properties within the 300 or 600 feet, whatever it is. And that's not really very useful, except to show us who the abutters are, where they are. So that's it. And the idea being that you get, it turns out to be 3 pages, and the first 11, you can just do, we talked today about Davis putting this on a writable PDF, whatever that is. It's a PDF that allows you to write right on the PDF. And so you can't really leave the website without knowing that you have to answer 11 questions. And I think that may help us. And I highlighted, even though to my surprise, going through the application, it does call for a narrative. It doesn't call it narrative, but it calls for a description of what you plan to do. And so I made the question number 5, which I think is what's been most lacking in the applications that I thought were deficient, was a narrative. Just what are you trying to do? Why do you need a zoning variance or a zoning special permit? What is it you're trying to do? And the response has been from some people, well, it's all laid out in the plans. Well, you know, for Matt and Austin and Davis, they're used to working with plans, but for the rest of us, we're not. And it helps to have somebody tell us what the plans are saying. So what I propose is that we adopt this new format. Davis and I met today and talked about, as I say, turning into a writable PDF, getting it on the website, and going from there. So the purpose the purpose of the meeting tonight is to get anybody's comments or concerns or suggestions for alternative approaches.
One quick question I have, and maybe it's a little pedantic on the application, is there's information about the property.
Yeah.
Do we want to specify that's property as is and not, proposed? Like, if we're proposing to increase building coverage, just specify that if they're going to go from 15% or 10% to 15%, that in the application on that first page under section 4, the building coverage and percentage of buildable upland should be as stands.
Yeah.
Trying to
okay.
reduce avenues for confusion.
I had a related comment,
Wait, hold on,
Jerry.
let me see that. I thought that, you know what, that's a good point. It just shows the present upland. I think I think you look in the plot plan. Let me do this now. Let me do this for a second. Yeah.
Well, should there be a current and a proposed for
Yeah.
at least the coverage percentage?
Yeah, there should be.
Yeah,
Because I was wondering if
Yeah,
that's
well, it's
where
on
you're
the,
going or where you're at.
it's on question number 12, if you have that. It says, it's in the required, the plot plan. It says, square footage and percentage of building coverage, as defined in the zoning bylaw, existing and proposed. But I could make that's a good point. I could, right under there, in the question 4, which has the, calling for the present coverage, we could do, present and proposed, very easily add that to that question, Austin. I think that's a
Yeah,
good.
I mean, I'm happy with it just being present as well. I'm not too particular. Maybe just have the first couple sections here. Just where do we currently stand with the property?
Well,
Help
that's
us
what-
identify what the pre-existing nonconformances actually are, and then I think the only thing I was looking for really was we have a present use of, like 4E is present use of structures and or land. Maybe just renaming section 4 to property current use or current state.
Yeah, all right.
I might
Yeah,
see,
Yeah, that makes more sense, I guess, than have the proposed in the. Although it might be clearer just to put it right in there. Have a,
Do they always think, 12G, which says, what's your square foot percentage? Do
Yeah.
they always include that in
No.
there? No, they
don't
don't.
always. I kept a model one I have here a model one where the fellow put I'll tell you who it was too, as a matter of fact, it's excellent. It has a chart right here, I don't know if you can see it, the zoning table. I don't know if that comes out clear here, but he has a zoning table where he has all that. He has the lot area and buildable upland, frontage, front setbacks, west setback, east setback, garage coverage, building height. He has it all. He has required, existing, and proposed. And that's ideal. That's.
I was about to say that. That's kind
what
of the
you're
thing is
looking
like before and afters is really it's beneficial for us.
yeah,
Is that too much work for?
Well, that's what's called for in the plot plan, but very few of them do it. This was done by.
So it shouldn't be any additional work if they're
No,
doing it.
I think they
It'd
have.
be easy to add that table into the Word document. I mean, it's not hard to add that as a table.
that's,
With those
yeah,
This is
rows.
actually from
and the
coastal
columns.
engineering, coastal engineering and all that.
a zoning table on a plan, directly on a plan is definitely the gold standard these days, I would suggest. Not all plan preparers provide one, but it's certainly something that we could, or that we could suggest. I certainly do out of my office. And the only other comment I had was to use, maybe Matt could weigh in on this, but I would suggest using the word existing versus proposed. That also tends to be kind of a standard
Yeah.
language
Yep.
uh,
Okay.
when referring to things like existing and proposed building coverage.
Now, is it something that we want everyone to fill out every single, if someone wants to make their house greater than 4,000 square feet, fairly straightforward, considering they don't, or as long as they don't violate anything else. But, if their rear, front, side setbacks, coverage percentage are all in order, should we only require them to do a certain ones that we're always interested in: square footage, building coverage, buildable upland acreage, and then the ones that are specifically changing and they can, omit the rest. If they have 1,000 feet side setback and they go to 900 feet, it's not real. I don't know if we want to burden them with that level of information for something so simple as a, house size increase if it's not an issue.
Well, we don't ask them that. We ask them if it is a non-conforming, how is it non-conforming? And if we don't answer that question, we presume it's conforming. So we don't actually burden them to be in the affirmative.
Yeah, I was thinking more if we end up moving towards a table like we have on the lot
Yeah.
plan. Wouldn't want them to fill out a gigantic table with all zoning related things if it's not necessary.
I presume anybody doing a plot plan is gonna do this, is gonna measure the distance from the plot lines. So I don't think it's a.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's not a additional. I'm happy with. I like
defer
the
to
idea of having
Matt
that
and
table.
Davis on that, but I presume that's something you do as a plot plan anyway. You're gonna do the measurement from the lot lines.
I think to your point, Austin, though, it's how we enforce this, right? So we ask for it all, and on contentious, difficult cases, every I's got to be dotted and every T crossed. If somebody comes in and needs, they're at 4,020 square feet of coverage, right? We're going to enforce it differently. We need sort of, the minimum, necessary information to rule on that, and if it's 4,020 square feet on a 10,000 square foot lot, we're going to look at that, scrutinize that harder than if it's a 3-acre lot. So I think it works to ask for it all, and then, let the applicant ask for, exceptions where that information might be onerous if it's a simple application.
Yeah, I'm
Jerry,
happy with that.
The one thing I wonder if we can just, someone else may require this, I don't, but on 13, the old days of getting, pounds of paper, forest worth of trees stuffed into our mailbox to come get our packages. It's so nice to have electronic documents now. So the departments may require a certain number of copies. I'm quite happy as a board member and quite frankly prefer PDF copies that I get from the website or by email. I'd love to see no hard copies. Again, if departments need some, let's reduce it to only the number required. I know in my office, we just slaughter trees providing countless copies for various hearings in various towns. And it's just, so many get tossed in the trash on the way out the door.
Well, let me respond to that. The number there is 5. It's supposed to be 5, and Jen can jump in here, but Jen has to file one, has to have one she keeps in a file. I think Davis has to have one he keeps in a file. And Jen has one she keeps for public viewing and doesn't leave the one that's for her file. And then the other 2 are for me and Martin.
Okay.
I can't manipulate the plot plans that are electronically delivered to my computer. I can't make them bigger. I see that when I go to the meetings, I see that Austin has a ability to get this thing down, and as does Sibel. But I'm there with a magnifying glass of my computer trying to read the thing. So I prefer a paper copy. But your
So
point is
that's fair, and certainly that's a smaller number than we used to in a reduction, which is great. I don't know, and maybe I missed it. Did we ask for PDF copies also, again, to save town staff from scanning? If we could ask for electronic copies as well. I don't think that, typically now we as construction professionals distribute PDFs, so it's not extra effort to do that.
Yeah. Jen, you want to comment on that? Are you with us? I don't know if she had.
Yes. Yep, I hear you. So that's right. So we require all applicants to submit PDF of everything, including plot plan, site plan, and any other plans that go attached. That's what I put on the website. I don't scan anything.
Perfect. Yeah. So the application should say that also then.
Kind of building off of that, could we, and I don't know if best to ask this from the source, from the folks submitting it. I certainly don't want to burden Jen with any more work than she needs, but can we standardize the naming convention for some of these supplemental files? Sometimes they're named with the case number, sometimes with the address, sometimes it's not obvious what's actually in the file, especially when we have 3 cases we're reviewing at a time. It might be nice just to have a case 2245 application, case 2245 site plan, and just very obvious. I rely, like you, Jerry, I rely on the opposite side of just the PDFs, and yeah, I find it cumbersome to deal with those in some cases.
Jen, you want to talk about the naming of the point that that Austin makes is that when you look for the information on the website, it comes under, it sometimes doesn't all come in one package and it's under a strange name.
And I imagine those are as submitted, is whatever the builder, whatever the person responsible for generating those files creates the naming. I think it'd be beneficial, especially when we look on the site that has all of the PDFs stored on them. You know, being able to sort those and make sure you have all of the supplemental documents at a glance by saying, I have all of case 1045 in front of me ready to go, and I don't have to look on page 8 where it says 18, you know, Triumph Way or something along those lines.
That's no problem. I'll make sure that they all say just the case number. We'll stick to case number to make it easy. So case number will always match application.
Okay,
No problem.
that would be great.
Lynn, we cut you off earlier. You had a question or a comment? Yeah, I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, they're banging around downstairs. I was just gonna say that I really wanted the current and proposed side by side in a table. So I was just underscoring what Austin said earlier, that
Yeah.
that would be helpful for me, that we don't have to search for it in the
Right.
packet. It's there in a table.
Yeah. Well, we can do that right on that first question there, the question number 4, and under the property. Existing, well, the buildable upland stays the same, the building coverage, existing and proposed in square feet. That's easy to add that to that question. Why don't we do that right there? I'll do that. Okay. Yeah, any other comments? This is a good time to bring up anything else in our procedures or how we proceed, you know. We have been, I think, to go to Matt's point, I think we've been very an easy board in terms of requiring. I think we've let people get away with a lot. And I also think that when it is de minimis, Davis and I talked about that today. Sometimes, you know, if it's so de minimis, the building commissioner doesn't even refer it to the ZBA. And we've had some de minimis things that we don't treat very, we don't spend a lot of time on them. You know, I think we have a record of approving de minimis very quickly.
So Jerry, I had a comment on number 7, the non-conforming.
Yeah.
Do you want to add a item in there where they tell us when the non-conforming began? Is that of any interest?
I'm not sure that's
Relevant?
I don't know. Let me think about that. I don't think it's of any interest.
Okay.
Non-conforming
It
began.
was pre-existing.
Yeah,
Conformance
most
is
of the
not-
time, I mean, I think 99% of the time it's going to, well, if we ask them for prior ZBA decisions. So if it's a ZBA decision that approved the non-conforming, that would come out in the decision. I think 99% of the times it's always a condition that was existing before the zoning law picked up on it.
Okay.
I'm not sure how often we're expecting or have experienced, I would hope few to none, folks who try to pull fast ones on, you know, we built this 10 years ago, didn't tell the town, and now we're trying to expand that non-conformance that we created illegally, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you're getting at, Martin, but
Well, you know,
good to know if someone says it's pre-existing, but the zoning law related to that came out prior to the non-conformance being created. You know, it wouldn't be a lawfully pre-existing non-conformance, right?
Yeah, that's an important point. I don't think it's something necessarily for the application, but it's a very good point and one that should be discussed during the hearing. We don't often, require that they prove that out, and this came up somewhat recently.
Yeah, I was thinking the Nauset.
Many of you haven't been on long enough to remember the presentations Dewey Landreth used to do, but he used to get up with the old versions of the code and kind of walk us through that history of why it was, either pre-existing or non-conforming and whatnot. And I just haven't seen anybody prove that out recently. So again, I'm not sure where it would fit on the application, but it is something that we should inquire about. It's the applicant's responsibility to show us that it either predates zoning and or was lawfully permitted.
Yeah, and uh, to that end, Matt, that's part of my responsibility in